Hello, I'd like to welcome people to a No Cold War Britain interview with Sami Ramadani today. My name's Maggie Simpson and involved in No Cold War Britain. Sami Ramadani is an Iraqi-born lecturer and writer on West Asia and current affairs. He's also active in No Cold War Britain and is a member of the steering committee of the Stop the War Coalition. So, first question today, Sami, is the US was defeated in the first phase of its war against Iran and was forced to change tactics. Iran paid a heavy price during the 40 days of war, with tens of thousands of US-Israeli bombs launched against it. The US announced a ceasefire, but in fact has imposed a blockade on Iran and continues to support Israeli bombing of Lebanon. The US will not accept defeat, so is continuing its war with changed tactics. Trump's weakness is that a majority of the US population opposes the war, and Republican Party support is going down in advance of the midterm elections. How do you view the unfolding of the war to date, and how do you consider it is likely to proceed?
Okay, one point that immediately comes to mind is this phrase, ceasefire. Although it's extremely welcome by peoples of the region that there will be a ceasefire and stopping of the bombings and wars of aggression, at least for a bit. But really, the word ceasefire has become also synonymous with war escalation and not respecting ceasefires and using, in fact, ceasefire periods and negotiation periods as camouflage for even greater attacks, greater wars of aggression. This has happened now in relationship to Iran, literally 3 times, whereby last year they were negotiating and they nearly had an agreement regarding Iran's peaceful nuclear program. And the Omani foreign minister, who was mediating between the two sides, announced that an agreement is going to be signed in a few days' time. In fact, by the Monday, he made the statement on a Friday, and he said all that remains is to meet in Vienna to sort out the technical details with the help of the nuclear energy agency. And sure enough, the next day, the United States and Israel launched their war of aggression on Iran. And it lasted 12 days of intense bombardments of Iran, and leading to vast devastation within the country, thousands of air raids, combined Israeli and American raids on Iran. Iran retaliated. They thought Iran will surrender because the war decapitated the leadership in Iran and many of the military commanders, and they thought Iran will surrender. It didn't work out that way. Iran started retaliating within 8 hours or so, 10 hours. And that eventually led to a ceasefire, because the damage done to Israel and some of U.S. installations in the region was becoming too much. So the United States agreed a ceasefire. However, that ceasefire was not really respected. A period of negotiations ensued. And again, this most recent attack on Iran, the so-called 40-day war, started again when the negotiations were maturing and progress was being made. And sure enough, the United States started attacking Iran again and assassinating some of Iran's leaders. And this time it was done in a much more intensive way, tens of thousands of raids and bombardment of Iran ensued. Lebanon joined the war with the Lebanese resistance joining the war against Israel to evict Israel from Lebanese occupied territory. This is rarely mentioned in the media, that the resistance in Lebanon doesn't just haphazardly start wars and so on. The Lebanese territory is actually occupied, and there was a ceasefire in Lebanon that lasted a good 15 months, during which literally Israel violated the ceasefire thousands of times, thousands, air, land, and sea violations. And the resistance did not respond because the Lebanese state wanted it to restrain itself and not provoke Israel further. That didn't work out anyway. Anyway, Lebanon joined in the fight, and this is where we are more or less now. There is a ceasefire in place again, which has been going on for about 20 days. And that ceasefire was also following a bombardment by retaliation by Iran against Israel and US bases in the Gulf. So what is important in that new 40-day war was Iran targeting all US bases in the Persian Gulf, 23 various bases, including some in Jordan. So, and by what some military experts are saying, these bases were badly damaged. So the United States has suffered big damage in terms of its U.S. military bases in the Gulf region. These Gulf states, whether it's Kuwait, Saudi, Qatar, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates, UAE, have been active, although pretending that they did not support the war, but the United States actively used the bases in those countries. And this the thank you of both the U.S. President, Foreign Secretary, Defense Minister, War Secretary, as well as the Chief of Staff, U.S. Chief of Staff, because until today these states say we have nothing to do with it, we do not support it. But really the U.S. Chief of Staff confirmed by name all these countries as having actively helped the United States in its war of aggression on Iran. So you have a situation now where the US bases have been severely damaged in the area. Israel has been severely damaged through Iranian missiles. And very important development is the blocking of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran doesn't call it full blockage, it calls it partial. It would not allow Israeli, United States, and any enemy ships. All ships going through the strait must get Iranian approval to go through. Important for the viewers to realize that this very narrow strait, the Strait of Hormuz, is the midway point of it is between Iran and Oman. So half of it is territorial waters of Iran, and the other half is Omani territorial waters. So it's not some great wide strait. It is actually a very narrow strait, and the deepest part of it, where the big oil tankers pass, is within Iranian territorial waters. That is quite a significant fact that the Western media completely ignores. The other half is Omani territorial waters, and Omani territorial waters is the shallower parts. Only smaller ships and the like could pass through. But the entire strait now, as far as Iran is concerned, is no-go territory, no-go waters for enemy ships. And all ships must get approval. Iran argues that this is within international law because this is a period of war. There is war, it's wartime, and it will apply wartime conditions on the strait. But the consequence of that has been enormous crisis within the oil sector. The 20% of world oil supplies go through the Strait, and very importantly, and this I myself only realize how important that is the lack of fertilizer consequent to the blockage of the Strait, because it's a byproduct of the oil industry, and also helium gas and many other elements that are the byproducts of petroleum. They are actually processed within the Gulf region and exported to the world. So even in the medical sector, apparently these gases are used, helium especially, and so on and so forth. So the overall impact on the world economy is quite big with the closure of the Hormuz. The United States could not reopen it. They threatened, Trump even threatened to wipe out Iranian civilization in an infamous social media posting of his. He continued to threaten Iran to be wiped out, to be returned to the Stone Age and so on, but Iran would not budge, would not surrender, because Trump also wanted it to completely surrender to US demands. Iran withstood that pressure, and the Iranian government has become even stronger within domestic politics of Iran, because millions of people have been going out every evening, and this is rarely reported. All Iranian cities at night are occupied by millions of people who go down into the squares and guard strategic areas of Iran, despite political differences amongst the Iranian people, but overwhelmingly the vast majority of the Iranian people have been supporting the Iranian government against the war of aggression that is imposed on Iran. And this is noticeable. You see it in live footage coming out of Iranian cities that our BBC would not show us. The Western media doesn't show us, because it contradicts a big narrative they have, that overwhelmingly the Iranian government is opposed by the Iranian people. There are opposition forces in Iran. There are various political differences in Iran. In fact, the dynamic of political debates in Iran is quite public and is quite well publicized within Iran in terms of papers, academics, and so on. But this is not reported. They would like to show Iran to be a ruthless, single-man dictatorship, slaughtering people left, right, and center. This is a narrative which has proven to be, to the whole world, to be completely false, because without the support of the millions of the Iranian people for their nation, for their government's resistance towards the war of aggression, Iran would have collapsed for sure. But this is an important point also to stress. And one other important development that has happened is that the United States decided to impose a blockade on Iran within the Gulf of Oman, within the Oman area overlooking the Arabian Sea and the whole of the Arabian Sea. So they have blockaded all Iranian ports alongside that long stretch of waterways. Especially within the Arabian Sea and overlooking the Gulf of Oman. And this has become a big point of contention. Iran says the Strait of Hormuz will remain closed because temporarily they opened it after the ceasefire, but they only did not allow, while it is open, American and Israeli related ships. So the United States decided to impose this blockade over Iran to force it to open the straits. Iran said no, and this is where we are today. There are negotiations to and fro through a mediator, the Pakistan mediation, and some other mediators like Russia is involved, China, Oman, perhaps Qatar, perhaps Turkey. So there are numerous states involved in terms of trying to mediate. The United States is still threatening Iran with oblivion if they don't surrender, and Iran is extremely unlikely to surrender because their people, even if the government was to surrender, the Iranian people are out on the streets saying, no, we shall resist and we shall not be humiliated by the US empire and its sidekick Israel, its Rottweiler in the region, Israel.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the resistance of Iran has been, quite heroic, really, actually, against such a sort of major power as the US. But moving on to sort of the impact of the war more broadly, significant parts of Western Asia have been devastated, with Israel continuing its war on Lebanon and continuing attacks on Palestine in Gaza and on the West Bank. Also, as was expected, Iran has retaliated against the military assaults made on it, which has damaged US bases and other sites in the Gulf, cooperation countries. Would you elaborate on the impact of the war in West Asia itself?
Sure. I'm really glad you mentioned the Israeli war of genocide in Gaza, because contrary again to Western media, that genocide goes on despite the so-called ceasefire. As I mentioned earlier, these ceasefires are really a prelude for greater different types of wars of attrition against the people of the region. And within Gaza, Israeli forces, Israeli tanks and troops occupy almost the half of Gaza, with no Palestinian allowed to live there. All the little villages and towns within that area have been completely demolished, like the other towns and cities of Gaza, completely demolished. All factors that allow for life to exist have been destroyed or almost destroyed. Hospitals, universities, schools, you name it, all aspects of Palestinian people's civilization have been targeted by the Israeli war of genocide against the Palestinian people. And today, this war of genocide goes on under, not with heavy bombardment, although assassinations continue. Even today, the son of the leading Hamas negotiator was assassinated in Gaza. Similarly, in Lebanon, a significant Lebanese resistance leader was assassinated in Beirut. This is not to mention, I'll come to Lebanon in a minute, but within Gaza, the blockade continues on the Palestinian people. The ceasefire should have allowed for the entry of humanitarian assistance. Only very little is allowed to go through. So the Palestinian people are still being subjected to a war of genocide, but with different tactics and different methods. And the Western media, again, I will continue mentioning the Western media because they are complicit in these crimes. Otherwise, I wouldn't bother. But because they are hiding the facts from the people of Britain and people in the Western world, they are actually being complicit in this war of genocide against the Palestinian people and the devastating war that Israel has been launching against the people of Lebanon. Today in Lebanon, after the ceasefire agreement, which was signed about 17 months ago, Israeli forces continued to encroach into Lebanese territory. Now they control a new strip of land within occupied Lebanon, ranging between 3 kilometers to 10 kilometer strip, and they are systematically demolishing and destroying all the villages and little towns within that strip. They are making that long Lebanese territory, again, not being able to support life, completely demolishing everything. All villages in that strip are being systematically destroyed, all within the so-called ceasefire. So the cost to the Lebanese people has been massive. Thousands of people have been killed, tens of thousands injured, about 1.5 million people made homeless. They had to leave their towns and villages in South Lebanon. Much of Beirut has been devastated with Israeli bombardment. So you could see that this is part of an overall picture where the United States and Israel are trying to destroy the people's will to resist in the region. They want the people of the area to succumb to Israeli expansion and Israeli further colonization of Arab lands, and for Iran to submit to US diktats. So you could see the war in the region within the umbrella of US imperialist attempt to dominate, to impose its hegemony over West Asia. This is very clear now. But this plan, this ambition, this aggressive policy is meeting resistance of the people in the region, meeting the resistance of the Yemeni people, of the Iraqi people, of the Palestinian, of the Lebanese, and of the Iranian people. And this resistance is extremely strong and not to be messed about with. And the United States is facing now a potential massive strategic defeat. And that is why some analysts are talking about the United States reaching a stage where the defeat will be so big that they and their Israeli, what shall I call them, client state, are contemplating the use of nuclear weapons against the Iranian people. Now, I don't know. This is what some experts are saying, but what nearly all independent experts are saying, some are pro-Western, pro-American experts, are saying the United States has been defeated so far. And the sooner the United States admits defeat and signs an agreement with Iran, and to include proper ceasefires in Lebanon, Palestine, Yemen, etc., and the rest of the region, then the United States might suffer an even bigger strategic defeat. And this is where the situation is at the moment, with negotiations going on, indirect negotiations, or exchange of letters, as they are called, with the United States either having to concede or escalate in a much more devastating way.
Yeah, I think that is a choice, isn't it? To concede or to escalate, and it's very disturbing times, really. But just to say, that the last question really for today.
Okay.
Although we could talk for a long time about this, I'm sure. The US war on Iran has highlighted how the US is taking increasing control of global oil supplies, which enables it to increase its dominance over countries that are affected. How do you see the war on Iran in that context?
In the context of control of the United States over oil production, this is an important issue because it started with the kidnapping of President Maduro in Venezuela and controlling Venezuelan oil. Venezuela has the biggest oil reserve in the world, and I think outside of the United States, I'm not certain of that statistic, but Venezuela is a huge oil reserve, huge oil producer, and the United States has succeeded, at least temporarily, to control Venezuelan oil. And they were aiming to do the same within the Persian Gulf, whereby this war against the Iranian people is partly to eliminate Iran as an independent state, opposed to US domination in the region, supporter of the Palestinian people, Lebanese people, etc., in the area, opposed to US imperialist the domination of the area. The other reason for the war is to tighten control, as you suggested in your question, tighten control over oil production in the Persian Gulf. Massive oil suppliers, Iran itself, Iraq, Kuwait, the rest of the Gulf states are all major oil suppliers. And the aim of the United States, or at least one of its aims, apart from helping its own economy, its own hegemony over a very important raw material in the world, the other reason is its aim to pressurize China to also fight against China, economically at least for the time being, that they hope that they could threaten the supply of oil going to China, both from Venezuela and from the Gulf region. China is the main importer of oil, of Iranian oil. So this attempt to blockade the area is not only aimed against Iran, but it's also aimed against China. The United States is extremely worried about the emergence of a multipolar world. And this we should not forget as the other dimension of this war. It is not only a regional war, but it has very important global dimensions, whether it's to do with oil as a strategic material, both in terms of energy, its importance to energy, and as we discovered, its importance of the side products of oil, whether it's plastics, chemicals of all manner, fertilizers, etc. So you can see that the United States is trying to dominate this strategic material, and as part of its attempt to impose its hegemony and prevent the not only the emergence but the solidification, because I don't think they can stop the emergence of a multipolar world. A multipolar world is with us today. What they are trying to do is either destroy it or weaken it and increase US domination and hegemony. So the war in West Asia, the war against the Iranian people, Palestinian people, Lebanese people, Iraqi people, Yemen, etc., is really an important part of the worldwide people's, humanity's struggle to stop US empire policies, stop genocidal Israel, because Israel has become, Israeli interests for the past few decades have become identical with US interests. And that's important, that US interests have been identical. Whether differences will emerge, whether differences will escalate between Israel and the United States remain to be seen. But so far, as we have noticed, there is an identity of interest between what Israel is aiming at and what the United States is aiming at for the region and for the world, for that matter.
Yeah, that's so true. It's the US aims to sort of maintain its world domination are a big feature and a central feature of our times, and its ongoing wars are a part of that. And in terms of the impact and trying to stop it and the resistance, we've got to do our part here in the belly of the beast, so to speak. So, for anti-war, anti-imperialist activists and solidarity campaigns, developing our understanding of the situation is really important, all the better to sort of develop our solidarity and activity and support here. So I'd like to thank you very much, Sami, for sort of contributing to that effort today, and I'm sure we will come back to it again. But thanks very much for your insights into the situation.
Thank you for inviting me, Maggie. All the best.
All the best, man.
Bye.